A friend of mine sent me this HP Prodesk 600G1 for free. He had no use for it anymore as it's incapable of running Windows 11 without circumventing Windows 11's hardware requirements. So he was going to throw it out and asked me if I could use it. Well, as a matter of fact, I know someone who could really use this, so I'm going to pass it along. But I figured we could have some fun with it first. Could you use something like this and turn it into a game PC? Let's find out after the intro. This has gotta be the cleanest used computer I have seen, like, ever. I guess if you need a clean computer and you're from the Netherlands, you should call Gerard. There's even still a few SSDs dangling around in here. The 320 watt power supply unit does not have any PCIe connectors, so to keep it as cheap as possible, I'm going to add my GTX 1050 Ti in here. There's faster cards that don't need external power, but I don't have any around. And since there's a proprietary connector to the mainboard, you can't just throw in any power supply without converter cables. I'm not gonna bother today. Yeah, call me lazy, see if I care. We're going to try this both on Windows and Linux, but let's start with Linux first. To make good use of both SSDs, I installed EndeavourOS on the first one, making sure to pick ButterFS for the root file system. Next, I used the ButterFS device add command to add the second drive to the ButterFS pool. Oh, it didn't like the fact that the drive still has a partition table. Let's just clear it out with BLK discard first. Alright, drive added. Then I converted the root volume to RAID 0 with... oh. Ah yes, it doesn't like doing this because you'll lose metadata redundancy. Let's use the force! Alright, so I have now combined both drives together, leaving me with a 214GB file system on two 120GB drives. Quick note, yes, this is a very bad idea, because if one of the drives fails, you most probably will lose everything. It should give us a speed boost though. Let's check. Nice! That's way more than a single SATA drive is able to move around. Not sure how fast these drives are, but they'll probably max out at about half of this, if only because a SATA connection doesn't provide more than some 600 megabytes per second. Here's some of the machine's specs on screen. It's a 4th gen Intel i7 CPU, and we've got 16GB of DDR3 memory. Seems pretty decent, right? We're running Nvidia's 580 drivers, which are the last ones that will support the 10 series cards like this one. Let's try some games! GOG is giving you a 15% discount on all of its catalog on your first paid order using the code GOG15 until March 26th. And you'll make me insanely happy if you use one of my affiliate links for your order over there, so I get a tiny little commission. Anyway, let's get into some DRM-free gaming goodness! In A Plague Tale: Innocence at 1080p and a low graphics preset, I'm seeing frame rates mostly in the mid to high 40s. In BioShock Remastered at 1080p and the settings shown on screen, I'm getting frame rates somewhere between 130 and almost 300 FPS. Generally somewhere in between those numbers though, which I guess is somewhat playable? In Dredge, I'm seeing a nice 200-ish FPS. Good enough? In Game Deck, mostly normal settings at 1080p, we're getting some 60-70 FPS in general. In Grip, 1080p medium settings, I'm seeing some 70-ish FPS. Seems decent enough. The Outer Worlds has a detect button, which changes the settings to medium for this GPU. With that, I'm getting a decent 50-60 FPS. If I want to raise that, I would need to lower the render resolution. The GPU is the biggest limiting factor here, by the way, with a constant 99 to 100% usage. At 1080p and mostly normal settings, Tomb Raider's built-in benchmark shows a nice 155 FPS average. In-game, that seems to be pretty accurate. What about Warhammer 40,000 Bolt Gun? At 1080p and the settings shown on screen, we're getting a nice 100-ish FPS. Sometimes some more, sometimes a little less. But very playable, I'd say. This is a DirectX 12 game, as shown by the fact that it's running to VKD3D here. In DirectX 11 mode, using DXVK, the frame rate seems to be more constant and less stuttery though. So that concludes our testing on Linux. In about all games, we could see the GPU being the bottleneck here, so you should be able to squeeze quite a bit more out of this machine using a higher end graphics card, I would say. Hey, if someone will send me an RTX 3050, I'd be happy to give it a try. I figured some of you would like to know how this would do on Windows. Windows doesn't want to run on a striped volume, so I added another SSD and installed it on that. Next, I opened up disk management and created a striped volume on the two SSDs that had Linux on them a moment ago. So how does this perform? Similar as in Linux, it about doubles the speed of a single SSD. Again, this is a very bad idea if you value your data, but it does provide a nice speed boost. Let's copy the games onto this super mega fast volume. I'll test them with the same settings as before on Linux. In A Plague Tale: Innocence, I'm seeing similar frame rates as before. BioShock Remastered also provides high but similar frame rates. Dredge seems to perform better on Windows, with some 40 to 50 FPS more than I got on Linux in the same places. Absolutely nothing wrong with a 200 FPS on Linux, but damn, this stinks. In Game Deck, the frame rates also seem a tad higher, some 5 to 10 FPS difference in this case. In Grip, I'm also getting some more performance out of this GPU, with more regularly going over 80 FPS or even higher than that. The Outer World seems to perform about the same in Windows compared to Linux. The Tomb Raider benchmark shows some 13 FPS more on average compared to Linux. That's sound though. I haven't tried to fix it, but whew. Last but not least, let's try Bolt Gun again! Quite a bit higher than it was on Linux. I'd say some 25% more. Damn it! I'd rather see it the other way around, but it's just not the case. So 5 out of 8 games show better performance on Windows 10 compared to Linux. The others are just similar, so no speed boost over there. In about all cases, the GPU was the limiting factor. If it would be easier to change the power supply of this machine, I would certainly have tried a more powerful card. Anyway, for a free PC and cheap graphics card, I'd say this still is a pretty decent system today. It's insane you cannot just install Windows 11 onto this and expect it to keep working. Thank you Gerard from GeForce One for supplying this machine. And thank you very much for watching. Until next time.